You've got some real estate and you want to know how to best protect it, stick around. We're going to jump right into that. So the best way to protect your real estate is going to be to use some kind of LLC. If you have, let's just use an Airbnb as an example, and someone slips and falls, and that asset, that piece of real estate was in your personal name, they can then come after you and try and sue you for all the other assets that you may have in your name. So let's just say you have a portfolio of 10 Airbnbs and someone slips in one of them. If they're all in your name, then they can come after you and potentially take all of those assets because they are at risk. What we're going to show you is how not to do that, the best way to set yourself up so that you can protect yourself and your family and those assets that you've worked so hard to accumulate. Now, the easiest way to do this is just to not have those assets in your own personal name. There's lots of other ways we can go about doing that, whether that's putting them into some kind of LLC or a trust, which is even better. We'll break down the subsets and we'll go through what all that means in just a second. So the first thing people always get confused about when they're asking me is, should I do an S Corp or should I do an LLC? So let's flick down here. So S Corp versus LLC. So there is a lot of benefits to having an S Corp in the right situation, but that's not always the case. So we're going to make sure that you understand when you would need an S Corp and when you wouldn't. Most of the times you can get better advantages of using an LLC, or even better, a trust would be the best one to use. But we'll get into all of that right now. So the issue with the S Corps is that when you move things in and out of an S Corp entity, that creates a taxable event. So back to the screen here, moving in and out equals taxable event. And we do not want that to happen. So really, that means we do not want our real estate or any assets that we own in that S Corp. So that then leaves two different entities, which are the LLC and a trust, both of which are great for this. So if you have the LLC set up, then you've got limited liability, which is really good. And then you also have that in the trust, but you have some additional benefits in the trust that you don't necessarily get in the LLC, which is more asset protection, and it's really hard to find out who the owners of the trust are. So if you don't know who you're suing or even the entity name, then it could be really difficult to figure out who you're going after if this trust is bifurcated. And that's just a fancy clause that a lot of trusts can have in them if they are set up correctly. So it's really important to know what type of trust you have, how it's set up, and how it works. But for the purposes of most people, an LLC will be more than sufficient. And if your net worth is above, let's say, 3 million, then that's where trusts really come in. But either way, if you have an LLC or a trust owning your real estate, you're gonna be in a much better position. So let's talk a little bit about LLCs, because that's going to be the most common thing that most people use to set themselves up. And there's a main subset in the LLC world that we can get into, and that is going to be how we're going to set it up. So we can have member managed, or we can have manager managed. This is a thing that a lot of people get confused about. So let's just break that down. So if you are a member managed LLC, that means the owners have collective control. collective control over that entity, right? Versus if it's member managed, then, sorry, if it's manager managed, then you can either hire a professional or you can elect members. And that will help run day-to-day activities within that LLC. So it's really important to know the differences and pick which one is best for you, depending on who has the time and the skill set to actually run that LLC as a business day-to-day. Another thing you really need to know when creating LLCs and subsets is the disregarded entity, which is passed through to the individual members of that, versus if it's set up as a partnership, then that's a pass through and it creates a K1. So the different subsets are really important from a tax perspective, but from a protection standpoint, the LLC is going to be a lot better than the S Corp. The trust is actually going to be even better than the LLC due to the extra protection, privacy, and the bifurcation. So it's really difficult to figure out who the real beneficiary is of a trust if it's created and set up in the right way. If you stuck around this long, hit the link below or hit the end screen and join our free group where we provide you a lot of content and information on how to best protect yourselves, reduce your taxes, and meet in our community.